So we do a lot of training here about how to make better slides, but how do you actually tactically use PowerPoint, especially in teams? And so I want to walk through 5 simple principles that I like to use in working with PowerPoint. In my early months of consulting, I got a lot of training, feedback, and coaching on how to think about slides at an insane level of detail. I was sort of shocked, and honestly, I rejected some of the training at first, but over time saw how useful some of these really simple things could be in helping the flow of work in a chaotic consulting environment go a lot smoother. The first is super basic, naming conventions, right? And so often what we would do, I think this is something consultants still do, saving the document with a new updated date, right? So I might save something as 05/15/2024 if it's the latest version I worked on May 15th, 2024. At the end, we might add like a V2 if it's the second version of the day, right? And you pass back and forth the document. And agreeing on these naming conventions is really important in your team because you want to know where are we in the document. It's also sort of a timestamp source of truth that you can refer back to. What's that thing we were working on at the beginning? Let's see if we can remix that. Second thing is context pages. This is often overlooking in many presentations in the companies I work with. This is also very easy to fix. All you need is a few templates. This can include upfront context slides like, hey, here are the questions we're exploring today. Like you can literally have a slide saying, here's what we will discuss, and then have 3 questions. And it says, okay, here's the frame for the conversation. In addition to that, you can also have higher level or scoping documents. At the beginning of all my presentations, including check-in documents throughout a project, I like to say, hey, here's the exact problem we defined in the original scope and contract. Here's how we're attempting to approach it. In addition to that, I also like to include process slides, and that can show, hey, here's what we've done. Here's where we are right now, as you can see highlighted in this slide, and here's where we're going. Third thing is, who's doing what and when, right? Getting more detailed about the process. You should never leave a meeting without ensuring things are going to be in motion. PowerPoints are not the job. They are not the product. Although they can be valuable in communicating information, what you're always trying to do is get actions to be taken. And so at a high level, what we would do in consulting is ask the question, okay, what do we want the CEO or client stakeholder to do immediately after this meeting, and then put that in the document. So whenever you're presenting to something, you should always have a next steps page saying exactly what you want them to do, and you can often detail it in specific steps. Next steps, tomorrow AM, you should X, by next week, a month from now, 3 months, and sort of like mapping out where do we go from here? How does this fit into what you're working on? The fourth thing, custom decks for custom audiences. In consulting, you're often doing these insane deep dives. So you'd end up with these massive decks that are 100 pages, if not more. I've seen decks that are 500 pages. It's too much information for a half an hour meeting. And so what we would do is think through, okay, here's all the information, here's the super deep dive, but what's a presentation deck look like, right? So there'd be the master deck, and then there'd be a presentation deck. The presentation deck might be like 50 slides, and then you're making decisions based on what you actually want to show, and or if you're just doing it visually. Finally, you might have like a CEO or board deck. These are intended to communicate all the way up the chain at the highest level of the organization. And in those environments, you often don't have as much time to communicate. So you need like 5 to 10 slides. And this can be super helpful because it helps you synthesize, okay, what's actually important? It forces you to take a chunk of 10 to 20 slides and say, okay, if we had to only show one thing, what would it be? Finally, the most important thing I like to come back to a lot on this channel is think before you PowerPoint. This is a phrase I emphasize in my corporate workshops. It helps people remember that the slide is the final form of thinking, synthesizing, structuring, and all the skills I teach in my courses. PowerPoint doesn't suck. It's the thinking that sucks. There's nothing wrong with PowerPoint. It's just a medium like any other. But the defaults in the software aren't that good. We must think structure and be creative about how to use it if we are to communicate effectively. If you have other questions on how to use PowerPoint or other tips yourself, I'd love to hear them below. drop a comment and ask any questions you'd like. If you want to go deeper, you can check out my course, Think Like a Strategy Consultant, where I go much deeper on how to create beautiful slides and tell stories using PowerPoint.